I'll call the Tuesday, November 23rd, 2021 meeting of the Cumberland Planning Board to order. Roll call, Ms. Rashich. Mr. McDonald. Mr. Butler.
Here.
Mr. Scown.
Here.
Mr. Bush. Ms. Reese.
Here.
Mr. D'Ambrosio. Chair is present, and absent at the moment is Mr. Costa. Before we begin, short announcement. This meeting is also being held virtually on the Zoom platform. If you have any interest in any item on the agenda, we will turn your audio on and promote you to a panelist as the item is called. If you would like to comment or ask a question, please raise your hand, and by clicking on the button labeled "Raise Hand" when the chairman opens the floor for public comment. Okay. Next item, approval of the planning board minutes of October 27th. I do have one comment, and that's the adjournment. I'm not sure, but I don't believe I seconded the motion to adjourn. Are there any additions, corrections, or deletions?
We'll correct that.
I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes with the noted correction.
I have a motion by Mr. Butler,
Second.
second by Ms. Rashich. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Director's report. Mr. Stevens.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple of things. One is we have a new planning clerk, Emily O'Neill, who started a week or so ago. And in fact, she's been instrumental in preparing this packet for trial by fire. Anyway, we welcome her. She's a native of Cumberland and just recently graduated summa cum laude from the University of Rhode Island. The other thing I want to mention is that the Conservation Commission is reconstituted now. They had some expired terms. There are now 6 members where there was only 1 member about a month ago. I'm going to staff the Conservation Commission. What's important for you to appreciate is that they have the authority to review master plan applications and forward a recommendation to the planning board. So what I think we're going to try and do is have them meet on Monday, the Monday before your Wednesday meeting, so that we can get a recommendation out and have it be, a reasonable turnaround of recommendations.
Board have any questions? Hearing none, we'll move right along to the next item. Request for performance bond extension and reduction. Owner applicant Terrapin Development LLC, project name Hidden Meadow. Location of Hidden
Mr.
Meadow
Chairman?
Drive. Yes?
Sorry to interrupt.
Oh, sorry, yes. There was a request.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. If the board has no objection. So which number is it? Which item number? Mr. Stevens? Oh, item number 6. If the board has no objections, we'd like to kick item number 6, zoning board of review recommendation, Kevin Joyce, to the top. With that being said, zoning board of review recommendation, owner applicant Kevin Joyce, K2 LLC, location 62 Pine Road, assessors plat 63, lot 115. The applicant requests dimensional variances from side yard setback and maximum lot coverage to construct a house. Mr. Modica.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is an undeveloped cleared parcel, about 0.21 acres or about 9,200 square feet, which is located in Lippet Estates. It's a non-conforming lot of record that was established in the late 1930s. The applicant is proposing to construct a 2-story single-family dwelling about 30 feet wide by 44 feet deep, or about 1,300 square feet. The driveway will lead from Pine Road to a two-car garage, and a septic system will be placed east of the driveway. Side yard setback requirements in this R1 zone are 20 feet. Both sides of the house will be 10 feet from each side lot line, therefore 10 feet of relief from both side lot lines is requested. The maximum lot coverage is 20%. So for this lot, the maximum lot coverage would be 1,838 square feet. The proposed lot coverage, including the house and driveway, is about 2,100 square feet, or 23% of the lot. Therefore, the applicant's requesting approximately 3%, or 262 square feet of relief. So the planning department finds that the proposed petition meets the goals and purposes of the comprehensive plan. Specifically, the project meets two goals of the housing and neighborhoods element. First, to ensure that new development in Cumberland is context sensitive and in sympathy with the surrounding natural and historic landscapes. And second, to build to the highest level of design. The size and scale of the proposed home is proportional to its relatively small size lot, and its design is in keeping with the character of other homes in the neighborhood. The placement of the house and length of the driveway was dependent on the most appropriate location and placement of the septic system according to DEM and town standards. And the applicant is proposing to place the septic in the most optimal location, which defines the necessary length of the driveway and the placement of the house. There's a house to the west at 60 Pine Road, which has a garage in between the owner's house and the applicant's proposed house. So the intervening garage at 60 Pine should mitigate any visual effect from the new house. And the property to east of the applicants at 64 Pine Road is undeveloped and a smaller lot than the applicants. One item that was recently brought to our attention, if you look at the first map included in your report, shows that there's a water course running at the rear or behind the rear of the property. So we've asked the applicant to engage a wetland scientist to determine if wetlands are present and to delineate the appropriate buffer area. So the planning department recommends the planning board forward a favorable recommendation to the zoning board of review to approve the requested variances for side yard setback and maximum lot coverage on the condition that the applicant provides a revised plan to the zoning board of review that delineates wetlands and their buffer.
Board have any questions for Mr. Modica?
Yes. Excuse me. This, you did say this is a grandfather lot, correct? So he can build on it by right.
That's right.
Right, because I wasn't initially crazy about the 9,000 square foot lot and 80,000 square foot zone, and then all this sideline setbacks relief. But I can see the situation. I think it's mitigated somewhat by the fact that it's set back on the lot, 90 feet. And I suppose it's, since it is grandfathered, we're really just adding some relief so he can do, excuse me, do what he's can do by right anyway.
Any other questions or comments? Pleasure of the board.
I'll make a motion in regards to 62 Pine Road, Assessors Plot 63, Lot 115, that we send a favorable recommendation to the Zoning Board of Review to approve the requested variances for side yard setbacks and maximum lot coverage as the application meets the goals and purposes of the comprehensive plan, with the stipulation that the applicant should submit a revised plan to the zoning board delineating the wetland buffers, if any, and include in our decision or our recommendation, the planning department's memo of November 17th, 2021.
I have a motion by Mr. Butler,
Second.
second by Ms. Reese. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed? Chair votes yes. Mr. Joyce, are you here? Good to go. Thank you. Back to the top of the agenda, which is item number 4, Request for performance bond extension and reduction, owner applicant Terrapin Development LLC, project name Hidden Meadow, location off Hidden Meadow Drive, Assessors Plat 57, Lot 5, 13, 27, 94, 121. Applicant requests a one-year extension and a reduction of the performance bond.
It refers to the Public Works Department's recommendation that which is dated November 10th, 2021, recommending the planning board reduce the $905,980 original performance bond amount by $322,000. Remaining work items, 402,713, and a 20% maintenance guarantee, 181,196. I want to commend the solicitor working with Attorney Brainsky to use this approval that is being asked of you to work out a completion schedule for a number of outstanding items. As you know, this is a very significant 20-unit development. We have a couple of changes because these negotiations went on after a press run was completed. So I'm not going to count for all of the items, but we have the steel back timber guardrails will be installed before July on or before July 1st, 2022. The non-steel backed timber guardrails will be installed before July 1st, 2022. The holding pond black vinyl fencing will be installed by April 1st. And there's a request for a 4-foot versus a 6-foot standard. That would be addressed later in this meeting as a recommended ordinance amendment, which the department is in favor of. The street trees, this is a little bit of a change from your original packet. The applicant will plant 30 street trees by December 15th. And Mr. D'Ambrosio might be able to verify this, but if they're planted properly, mulched and watered properly, it's likely that they would survive. And then the applicant will plant 70 additional trees by July 1st, 2022. So 100 trees in all is specified in Don Layton, registered landscape architect, Don Layton's plan. That was part of preliminary and final. And these trees are subject to Don Layton or a registered landscape architect's certification that they've been planted and maintained appropriately. Finally, there are two smaller items. Stone wall buttresses, if you may recall, there are two stone wall sections, and the landscape plan called for the buttressing of the edges with a boulder of appropriate size and scale. And then finally, the administrative officer has the discretion to extend deadlines as necessary if he or she has presented a legitimate reason. Again, the department is pleased and appreciative of the applicant's willingness to work out this rather detailed schedule of improvements.
The board have questions for Mr. Stevens. Mr. Scown.
I don't know if there's a typo on number 2, the non-steel back timber gardens being ordered before April 1st, 2021. 2022.
Well, there you go. Good catch.
And secondly,
Stand corrected.
if these deadlines are not met, what is the course of action you're going to be responsible for? I'm just curious as to what the meters into the discipline if things are not followed through.
Right. Well, there's a bond that the town can call if the schedule isn't adhered to. Sure. Yes.
Hello. The good part about this, and it's definitely consequences. Building permits are being issued in a series. So if the items that aren't complete by a particular date aren't, if they're not completed, they don't get the next set of building permits. So, and everything has to be done by next November 30th, so 2022, including the top coat, whether or not the last house is done or the last 3 houses are done, the top coat goes in. We didn't want the developer to be installing some of this stuff where he'd have to maintain it when there's still construction going on, particularly, as you know, the roadway, because it's just going to get eaten up by construction vehicles. But the fact that the building permits are conditioned on these things being done is great.
Okay, thank you. The board have any other questions? Mr. Bransky, anything to add?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Board record, Eric Bransky, on behalf of the applicant, Terrapin Development LLC, offices at 1543 Fall River Avenue in Seekonk, that's Route 6. As your planner, Mr. Stevens, noted, Ms. Morris and I, and particularly Ms. Morris, worked tirelessly to negotiate the terms of this proposed agreement. We have crafted together a legal document with the express conditions and the consequences, as you said, Mr. Chairman, as well as, the legal ramifications, the legal reasons that may require extensions, which we're not anticipating, but we are where we are in 2021, 2022 with shipping delays and everything else. So there has to be a little give and take, but they are tied to building permits, and all final work is tied to the issuance of the final certificate of occupancy. So before that gets issued, everything has to be done. And they're laid out in I think, 5-page legal document that Kelly and I have worked through together that my client will execute. The board will hopefully execute and will be recorded as agreements on conditions of approval. And it would be subject to, once everything's done, an issuance of satisfaction from the board, which would also be recorded. It's basically a construction sequencing that keeps everybody moving in the right direction. It's really something that we all work very hard for, and my client is very satisfied with. I guess the only point I'm going to add, and it's more of a request tonight, is on the bond issue. We'd like to ask that the board table that until the next meeting on the reduction of the Hidden Meadows bond for further review. There are some discrepancies that my client would like to speak with the Public Works Director. I think I'm not out of line in saying that our efforts have been geared primarily toward the agreement and getting everything in writing for the extension and the conditions of approval. Haven't had a whole lot of time to review the Public Works Director's recommendation, which came in last Thursday on the bond. We'd like an opportunity to do that. So if we could table that aspect, go with the extension of improvements and the approval of conditions, that would be preferable at this point. And then we'll come back at the next meeting, hopefully resolve the bond issue.
Thank you. Does the board have any questions from Mr. Bransky? Mr. McDonald?
Not if you, but Mr. Stevens, I'll wait.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Bransky.
I have a
Mr.
question.
Bush?
Do you happen to know how many permits have been granted so far for homes there, or how many lots?
Plus 3 will be issued, we think,
Next summer?
No, December.
December, okay. So we have a deadline, December 15th, for the Holding Pond black vinyl fencing. Is that, no, I'm sorry, that's for the street trees. 30
of them.
30 street trees,
30.
correct?
And the, I think the shoring up with the boulders, the stone walls.
Right. I mean, if they apply for those permits before the 15th and they're granted, and then they don't meet these deadlines, we're really spinning our wheels in a sense. It's
Well, if he doesn't meet the deadlines, he doesn't get the permits.
Well, okay. So in other words, if he applies for permits before the 15th, he's not
They
going to be
will not
granted
be
them,
issued.
will not be issued.
Even if
Okay,
they're prepared to be issued, they won't be issued.
okay, all right, thank you.
Subject to this. And what you're reading from Mr. Bush was the recommendation, which kind of preceded the formal legal agreement that Kelly and I worked through.
Okay,
Yeah, and I apologize, I wish this agreement was attached so that you could see it, because I do want to go over a couple more things so that, because Mr. Kutu, Chairman Kutu is going to sign this agreement. It's going to be recorded against all the lots that haven't been sold yet. So with regard to the 3 permits that are going to be issued, we're issuing 2 of them when he applies for them, because he's entered into purchase and sale agreements with people and we can't hold those up.
Mhm.
But what he has agreed is that one of those 3 permits will not be issued until the the trees are planted. Okay.
okay,
I also want you to know, because, again, Chairman Kutu will be signing this. The parties have agreed to reasonable extensions if necessary. For example, if he gets the timber guardrails in and the ground is too hard to put them in, and it's not reasonable, or if there's a shipping delay that we determine is reasonable based on making sure he's got to give us purchase orders and everything.
Mhm.
So we're making sure that everything is just done in a reasonable manner. Mr. Stevens is able to extend those deadlines, but again, it would be after review, and the developer has to provide us with all purchase orders when things are ordered, so that he's proving to us that he's moving everything along.
okay,
So at every step of the way, there's a group of permits that are contingent on work being done for the last couple of months.
all right.
I'm not going to go through the whole agreement. I
Mhm.
mean, if you want to see it, I can show it to you on this, but
No.
basically, those are the 2 other things that we didn't talk about, that there is allowance for a reasonable extension, and it will be recorded, and I am very comfortable with this agreement.
Board have any other questions?
Yes. I mean, you have a request to table the bond.
On the Hidden Meadows project, yes, not on the other ones.
Okay, so why would we table it? Why wouldn't we vote on it and then you come back and amend it later? Is that?
I offered that, but I think, I mean, it's up to him. So what I just said to you, Eric, is that you could get it reduced by X and then come back and say, well, I really think it should be reduced by another amount.
Okay.
It's up to you.
Yeah, I mean, if the board is willing to consider a second request when we have the opportunity to review that, and that's something they're willing to consider, then yeah, I mean, please feel free. We just figured the board wanted to do it all at once. If you'd like us to come back subsequently, we'll do that.
I'd prefer. it.
That's
Up
fine.
to the board.
We agree. Thank you for pointing that out, Mr. Scowen.
Thank you, Mr. Bransky.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. McDonald, you have a question for Mr. Stevens?
Or for Mr. DeMonica. Just an observation. Bond recommendations are based upon what we get from Public Works. And the idea of the gentleman, I got the impression that there's a talk of maybe negotiations, that there's a difference of opinion. But if you look at the 2, if you look at what the applicant is asking for and what Mr. Anderson has given the board, it's about a 60% difference. That's a lot. I don't know how the applicant and the town can be so far apart.
I mean, on the amount of bond.
That's correct.
Yes. So I think that's why Attorney Brainsky was seeking a meeting with DPW and engineering to see if they could revisit that.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, also wanted to remind you that Mr. D'Ambrosio was recusing himself
Yes.
on this matter because Don Layton, who worked for Beta Engineering, is also where he works. So out of abundance of caution, he's recusing himself.
So noted for the record. Okay. The board have any other questions? Okay. Pleasure of the board.
Mrs. Salvatore, for the motion, should we split the motion between the 2 issues, or one motion for everything? And should I read the the conditions into the record or just refer to Mr. Stevens' memo?
I think you should take 2 votes. And I think that your vote regarding the extension should be conditioned on the conditions. I don't like to say it that way, but conditioned on the agreement that was, I keep using the same words, agreed to, by the parties, and then allow Mr. Kutu to sign that agreement.
So we're talking about the conditions enumerated 1 through 6.
So for motion number 1, it would be to approve the extension, and I would suggest that extension for completing the improvements should be to November 30th, 2022. So they'll come back shortly before that, I'm assuming, if they need more time. Subject to the agreement negotiated by the parties, and that Chairman Kutu is authorized to sign that agreement on behalf of the planning board. And if you agree with that motion, you can say so moved.
So moved.
All in favor?
Oh, need a second?
Second.
Oh, second. I need a second.
Second.
Sorry.
Second.
A second by Mr. Scown. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No,
Okay, I will do a roll call, okay? Ms. Frashich.
Yeah.
Mr. McDonald,
no,
Mr. Butler,
Yes.
Mr. Scown,
Yes.
Mr. Bush,
Yes.
Ms. Reese,
Yes.
Mr. Okay, and the chair votes yes. The motion carries 6-1.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion in regards to Hidden Meadow 2, that the $905,980 original performance bond amount be reduced by $322,071, leaving a remaining balance of $583,909, which is consistent with Mr. Anderson's memo to the planning board.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Butler, second by Mr. Scown. Any other discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Chair votes yes. Motion carries.
And I just had a question on the agreement. Can we get a copy of that sent to us?
I have a copy here that Attorney Brainsky gave to me, if you want to look at it tonight, and I'll also email all of you a copy tomorrow.
If you email, it, that's fine.
Email?
Okay, next item of business is request for bond release, owner applicant Terrapin Development LLC. Project names Lanesville Commons Phase 2, Lanesville Commons Phase 3, and High Ridge Estates, Fairhaven Road Extension, Genoway, and Shell Ridge Court. Applicant requests the release of the remaining bonds for these 3 projects. Mr. Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I refer to the 3 memos of recommendation from Public Works. One is for Fairhaven. The total outstanding is $12,719. The recommended reduction is $5,119 for a remainder of $7,600, which would be to cover pond maintenance, detention pond maintenance. In regard to Jenna, there's $12,404.20. And then the reduction recommended is $5,510 with a remainder of $6,894.20. For High Ridge, the Public Works recommends the entire amount of $25,440.50 be the reduction.
Board, have any questions for Mr. Stevens?
If everyone's all set, I'll make a motion.
Mr. Butler.
Chairman. In regards to Lanesville Commons Phase 2 Fairhaven Road, I'll make a motion that a bond reduction in the amount of $5,119 be approved, consistent with Mr. Anderson's memo of November 16th, 2021, and that the remaining $7,600 be maintained until the remaining maintenance associated with the detention basin and as-built related item is resolved and addressed by the developer.
Motion by Mr. Butler,
Second.
second by Mr. Bush. Any other discussion? Oops, if, back up just before we do this. Because I don't know. Under discussion.
Chairman, can we just have 5 minutes or
Yes, Mr.
less?
Bransky,
Because there seems to be confusion here.
Okay,
I don't want to keep going if there's a problem.
certainly.
Thank you.
like to do is have the board, according to what I'm seeing, the reduction on Fairhaven is 5,119. The reduction on Jenna is 5,510. And High Ridge is being reduced by the remaining amount to go to zero, and have that, if possible, conditioned on satisfaction of, the remaining amounts dropped to zero, conditioned upon satisfying Public Works. So my client doesn't have to renew the bond in January and come back before the board for another reduction. You see where I'm getting at that? That's right.
So basically the request is to drop all of the bond amounts to zero,
Sub-
conditioned on all of the
Public
requirements.
Works being satisfied,
So once Mr. Anderson signs off, that he
Right.
has everything,
right,
then planning can execute
right.
dropping the bonds.
So like I said, these bond reductions are always frankly last minute. So that's why there's confusion here. It's a lot of work to get this done. So we usually get them a few days before the meeting, and then the developer doesn't get a chance to talk. So I think it's a reasonable request. I would say that the bond should definitely be reduced to the number that's being offered by the Department of Public Works, but that it also be reduced to zero if they satisfy the Public Works Department. Okay?
And that is on the Fairhaven and Jenna matters. The last one, High Ridge, is zero, according to Public Works. So we're all in agreement on that one. It's just the two.
So I'm going to do a motion redo. So we'll forget everything I said before. And I'll make a motion that in regards to Lanesville Commons Phase 2 Fairhaven Road, that the remaining bond amount of $12,719 be reduced by $5,119, and that the remaining balance of $7,600 also be reduced as once Public Works certifies that the developer has done the detention pond maintenance and submitted the final as-built plan. Make sense? And include with the decision, Mr. Anderson's memo of November 16th, 2021.
I have a motion by Mr. Butler. Any other discussion?
Yes, so we're voting that the bond is going to be reduced to 12,719 now and then to zero when all work is
Well,
completed.
the full bond is 12,719. That's the balance today. So
Okay.
we're saying that immediately it could be dropped by $5,119, which would leave a balance of 7,600, as long as the developer does the detention pond maintenance and submits the final plan and Public Works signs off on that, then the $7,600 would also be forgiven. So there'd be a zero balance.
Okay.
If he doesn't do that, then he'd just be entitled to the 5,119.
Okay, thank you. Oh, second.
And I had a second.
Oh, yeah.
Ms. Washington. Mr. Bush, we'll have the discussion portion.
No, okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
Thank you. Sorry for the confusion.
Thank you, Mr. Hanson.
Mr. Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion in regards to Lanesville Commons Phase 3, Jenna Way, that the remaining bond amount of $12,404.20 be reduced in the amount of $5,510, and that the remaining bond amount of $6,894.20 may also be dropped once the final updated as-built subdivision plan is submitted for review and approval, along with the Mylar plan to the Department of Public Works, and include in the motion Mr. Anderson's memo of November 16th, 2021.
Motion by Mr. Butler,
Second.
second by Ms. Reese. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Chair votes yes. The ayes have it.
And finally, Mr. Chairman, in regards to High Ridge Estates, Shale Ridge Court, I'll make a motion that based on Mr. Anderson's recommendation, that the full $25,440.50 bond be released and include in the decision, Mr. Anderson's memo of November 17th, 2021.
Motion by Mr. Butler, second by Mr. Scown. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Chair votes yes. The ayes have it. Thank you, Mr. Bransky. Thank you. Okay. Next item of business is item number 7. Major subdivision land development master plan preliminary plan. Project name Menard Estates. Owner applicant Haley's LLC, Michael Menard. Location 3650 Diamond Hill Road, assessors plat 42 lot 5. The applicant is proposing to subdivide assessors plat 42 lot 5. It is also noted that the applicant has requested a continuance of this agenda item. Mr. Moda.
That's correct. The applicant requests that this item be continued to the next planning board meeting in January.
Okay, that was the question I had, because it just says continuance of the next agenda item. So that's the date specific.
January 26th.
Okay, thank you. Board have any questions?
Do we need a motion or does it just carry it? We need a motion.
Yes.
Make a motion in regard to Menard Estates that the master preliminary plan be moved to the January 26, 2022 planning board meeting.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Butler,
Second.
second by Mr. Scown. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. And chair votes yes. Item number 8, pre-application meeting, major land development, project name Blackstone Valley Prep High School expansion. Owner applicant RI Mayoral Academy, SM Blackstone Valley. Location 65 McCundry Street, assessors plat 2 lot 3, and 5 Jones Street, assessors plat 2 lot 158. The applicant has filed a pre-application with the planning board to informally discuss the proposed 2-story addition to the existing school on assessors plat 2 lot 3, and creation of a parking lot and drop-off pickup area on assessors plat 2 lot 158. It's also noted here that no action will be taken at this meeting due to it being a pre-application request. Mr. Modica.
Mr. Chairman, before Mr. Marcus starts, my 2 kids are scholars at BVP. So I had a discussion with the solicitor earlier today, and we decided it would be best for me to recuse myself from this.
Thank you, Mr. Butler. Mr. Modica.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That's correct. This is an informational pre-application meeting where the planning board will not be taking a vote on the project. The applicant has submitted a master plan, but the planning department certified it incomplete because it did not include a traffic impact analysis to assess potential neighborhood impacts, which is required under state statute and by our regulations. So this is more of an informal session for the applicant to present their project and for the board to ask questions and gather information. I'll just give a quick overview of the project. I know the applicant will be presenting, but the school was built in 2017. This is Maple Street, it's 2-way. This is McCondry Street, 2-way. This is Jones Street, which is 1-way in from Broad. And then it's 2-way over here. And this is Winter Street, which is 2-way. It's located predominantly in a single family residential neighborhood. There's an auto salvage dealer over here called Pick and Pull. In 2016, the planning board approved the preliminary plan for this project for the construction of the school with a capacity of 330 students. According to the latest Rhode Island Department of Education statistics, there are currently 403 students enrolled. And with the new addition, the school will have a capacity to house 550 students, which would be a 36% increase over the 403 current enrollment. The addition will be built on the south side of the school over here. And this is a vacant, overgrown lot over here in which the applicant is proposing to build a parking lot with associated drop-off and pickup area for students. There will also be temporary phasing with modular units on this vacant lot during 1 year of construction. The planning department and the applicant, we both agree that the most important issue here is going to be the traffic, specifically the functionality of the parking lot for morning drop-off and afternoon pickup, especially during the peak period. At this point, we think it's premature for the applicant to propose a parking plan for drop-off and pickup until all the data has been collected with the traffic impact analysis. So we know exactly how many drop-offs and pickups are occurring in order to design an appropriately designed parking lot that can handle projected conditions. So I'll give you a quick overview of planning department staff's observation of how the drop-off and pickup works, which kind of goes like this. In the morning, buses are coming up from Broad Street up Jones around 7:15 to 7:20. There's a little bump out over here, so buses have to kind of veer out into the southbound lane of Macondri, into the southbound lane of traffic. This is where the buses queue up. In the morning, one morning, there were 2 cars parked here. There were 2 buses here, but that's all the buses that could park there. There are a total of 5 buses that serve the school. So the 3rd bus had to stop in the middle of Macondri Street and discharge students in the middle of the street. In the afternoon, all the buses line up here along Macondri Street, but as mentioned in the preliminary report, it's not long enough. So this last 5th bus, its rear is sticking out into traffic. In terms of parking, there are 71 total spots. There is the field lot over here, which is for students and staff. There are 64 spots, one of which is accessible. This is a faculty lot. There's 7 spots, 2 of which are accessible. In general, there's about 1 to 8 empty spaces here in the field lot. During school, there's a total of about 20 vehicles. I don't know whether they're students, teachers, but they're parking on Maple Street, they're parking on Winter Street. So their parking need is about 80 to 87 spaces right now. There's also a Cadillac lot down around here, which is on Titus and Macondri, where overflow parking should go. So in 2016, one of the planning board conditions of the preliminary plan was that on-site student parking shall be limited to 26 cars, and an enforceable permit system shall be established that precludes students from parking within 3 blocks of the school during the school day. This and a staggered arrival and departure regimen shall be subject to approval by the Cumberland Police Department. Planning department, we do not know if there is a permit system in place or if there is, if it's being enforced. So as part of the project, this faculty lot with 7 spaces is going to be removed. There'll be a new parking lot built here with 66 spaces, 4 of which will be accessible. We'll have a total capacity of 130. Current zoning requires 1 space per 5 students. So for 550 students, they would need 110. So they would exceed current zoning requirements. Let me go to the morning drop off back where parents are dropping kids off. This happens generally when the buses arrive around 7:15 and keeps going until about 7:40. The peak's around 7:35. Drop off is on all the streets: McCondry, Maple, Jones, Winter. Faculty, on one occasion, this is the faculty lot. It was backed up a bit. Cars were spilling into Jones Street. There's a walkway here that leads into the school. This is another favorite spot where cars pull over. And a couple of times the exit was blocked, leading out of the faculty lot. So it's not ideal, it's not optimal, but that's how we saw how the morning drop-off functioned. In the afternoon, it's a different story. Everyone is waiting right before the bell, and again, they're waiting everywhere. They're waiting all along McCondry up until into the pick and pull on Maple, on Winter, on Jones. So everyone gathers up for that 2:30 bell. When the bell rings, students are running out in all directions across the street. There are cars who pick up, make a U-turn around McCondry. There's a few people who like to pick up their kids in this crosswalk at McCondry and Maple Street. So, I mean, I guess you could politely call it a very unstructured situation at pickup. So what the planning department is curious, concerned about is how are we going to bring order in this parking lot from disorder, where everyone is used to parking, dropping off on side streets. How does everyone get funneled into this one location? According to the initial traffic assessment that was prepared, it said the most significant improvement the new parking lot will accomplish is the removal of parent pickup drop-off operation from the adjacent side streets. So I would take that to mean everything that's currently occurring will happen here in this spot. So I think we still need to see how that's going to be proposed. Importantly, the report mentions disbursement of traffic several times. So how many cars are after pickup or drop off? How many cars are dispersing or moving out of the neighborhood? And so while that's important, we're interested in that and what in their direction of travel. Our principal concern is what's happening before that disbursement. We want to know when and how many cars are arriving, especially for the afternoon pickup. When that bell rings at 2:40, how many cars are waiting? So one simple way to assess the functionality of parking, drop off or pickup, is count the cars. Count the cars that are waiting right before the bell. So let's say on any given day, let's say there's 50 vehicles that are waiting to pick up their students. Each car is 20 feet. You multiply 50 cars by 20 feet. You need 1,000 feet of curb to accommodate all that pickup. So I think we'd have to see how that works in that location. So that's why we're asking for the traffic impact analysis. One thing we wanted to add is how the drop off and pickup is going to work while the school is under construction. So there's going to be a temporary parking lot. I don't know if this road is going to be off limits to drop off. I think we need to understand what that year-long scenario is going to look like. Another thing that we're going to ask is that there's no COVID factor involved in this traffic analysis. I mean, we understand students might be reluctant to use the bus, parents might be reluctant to put their kids on the bus, and people may be driving more. But what we don't know if this driving behavior is going to change in the future or when it will change, or if this plague is going to go away. We don't know. So I think what they need to do is they need to use the existing data, which may be potential higher volumes, we don't know. But what that'll do is it'll build in a cushion and it'll count for potentially peak periods. So this can inform the design of this parking lot. So hopefully it could work under the busiest of conditions. The town is going to enter into a contract with a third-party traffic consultant, VHB. They are going to peer review PAR's traffic study. So that traffic study must be delivered to the planning department and VHB no later than December 15th in order for the peer review to occur in order to be placed on the January agenda. And the applicant has agreed to pay for this study. In our staff report, we also listed some other information that we need in terms of the ride report and parking permit implementation that will assist the planning department in evaluating the project. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Board of questions for Mr. Modica.
Glenn,
Mrs. Scott.
there's a significant backup in the afternoon across from Town Hall, just down the street. And they're coming around. I don't know the name of the street off the top of my head. I don't see how that parking lot can accommodate the number of cars that are in that particular area at that time. It just doesn't make sense. So I'm curious to hear what, the school is going to do about it. I think this, first of all, I think the school is great. I don't have a problem with the school. It's just that it is a very congested area and it does affect the residents in the area significantly. I go by there and sometimes you can't get by Broad Street, never mind the other streets. So,
Yeah, the school across the street is an elementary school for BV prep, and they have, they do a lineup, which may be proposed here. So a lineup takes a little while from the last car, which is, on Broad Street, snaking all around to get to the pickup point. Another thing I wanted to bring up is that, how are they going to change parents' behavior? I mean, they're used to dropping their kid off on Macondri, taking off, or they wait on Macondri, their child jumps in the car and they go. How are they going to make people wait in line if they're just used to, dashing off? And it's something we need to see too.
Can I just add something to it? I voted for this school at the very beginning, very reluctantly due to traffic and due to the fact that St. Patrick's School, the other school up the road, was already a problem with congestion and traffic control. So it doesn't matter what time, pickup or morning, we have a problem on Broad Street. And I'm on this district, I'm right up the street. I go through the traffic, I think a while back, I drove through it, so just to see how safe it was, if you remember. And I didn't find it, I don't find that they following. It's not really being maintained and done the way they presented it to us. And I am very reluctant to even approve something like this without really being specific. I would love to see that area cleaned up. Great job cleaning up the fair and all of that in there. But I just don't see, like you mentioned, that they're going to keep up and that are going to enforce what they're saying they were going to enforce, because they haven't been able to. And it's been a few years. And prior to COVID, I'm not even talking COVID. That's my.
Mr. McDonald.
Just some thoughts. You can't make roads better or bigger. Looking at Google Maps, there are plenty of east-west streets from the school to get on a Broad. but you can't go to the west, there's a river. 330 to 550 is a 60, it's a 2/3 increase, which means more cars.
Mm.
My thought is, I don't know whether this could be mandated, and that's that I'm sure the school must have some data on how many children take the buses and how many get picked up by parents. But I'm wondering about the possibility of mandating a certain number of students are required to take the buses. Not saying you can do it, but irrespective of how the school lays out its new footprint, so to speak, if this is approved, it's the constraining circumstances, the road grid.
I have a little bit of experience having a grandchild who went to an elementary school in town, is now at the middle school. And he started at the elementary school pre-COVID, and then, of course, COVID, as it was a year ago, and now he's at the middle school. And my wife and I, on certain days, will pick him up or drop him off in the morning to go to school. And I can tell you from our experience that the elementary school that he was going to they really had their act together. There was no congestion. I mean, they did have to wait in line, but the buses had a certain pattern a flow pattern, and so did the parents when they dropped off and picked up. And obviously, when the pandemic hit and the kids ended up going back to school, there were more parents, and that's the reason why my grandson gets a ride to school rather than riding the bus, because his parents do not want him on the bus at this point in time. But they had their act together. Now, since he's going to middle school, it's the same situation. And they have a very orderly traffic pattern that works. And I can tell you that the parents stick to and adhere to the requested drop off and pick up site. And there's very little, you have to wait in line, but it's not chaos where cars are parked all over side streets here and there. So what I'm looking for is, and this goes along with Ms. Reese, you have to, I mean, you realize what you have, and same thing, Mr. McDonald, you realize what you have with the street network down there, okay? But you have to make it so that the people who live there, okay, you have to keep their best interests in mind too, not just the schools. And I really do want to see what the traffic engineers come up with, okay, for a traffic flow pattern that doesn't have buses and cars doing all kinds of things. And the worst thing you can do is have people parking on side streets, and then I think I heard U-turns. That you can't have that. So I'm really, really interested in what they come up with, but I know it can be done. Yeah, are you going to have to wait in line? Yes, there are times when my wife in the morning would have to get up and get in line and wait to drop off my grandson. Okay, it's a little bit easier down the middle school because it flows a little bit easier, but it can be done. And I really want to see this mess cleared up, because according to the map we have here, these little red blocks are all over the place. That's where all the drop-offs and pickups are. And I can see right from there, we're not even going down and watching the traffic movements when schools are either in the morning or when they get released in the afternoon. I can tell you just by looking at this, that this is not going to work the way it is. And this is the reason why this recent thing is it's a real problem. It's a mess. So with that being said, I don't know if anybody else has any other comments. Thank you, Mr. Modica.
Thank you.
What I ask from the applicant, okay, is if you please make your presentation as brief as possible, in as much as there's a lot of work that's going to be done between now and the next time we meet. And it's my understanding that the second meeting is when we will be taking a vote on this project, and there's the anticipation that The traffic impact study will be completed at that point in time, and also the peer reviews will be completed. So I'm interested in hearing what you have to say.
I just want to make sure, when you say we will be taking a vote,
It's what it says in the meeting. in the
Okay.
memo.
all right, but master plan, I mean, if it takes more than one meeting, I don't want the applicant to
Oh,
think that you are definitely taking a vote next
Okay.
time.
Point well taken.
You will start a public informational meeting, and perhaps you will complete it that night.
We may consider and.
Yeah.
Consider it
And I'm also not saying that they won't take a vote. I want to be clear, but I just want, you're not promising a vote. That's all I'm saying.
No, it's a point well taken. We will seriously be looking at this project at the next meeting, at the second meeting. And at that time, we're going to get into the nitty gritty. If we can make a vote that evening, fine. But if there's more information that needs to be needed, or a situation where we're just getting, we need more time, then we'll take another advice at that point in time, and we could continue. So, sir, please, for your name and record.
We appreciate the clarification,
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman. Good evening again, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. I'm Attorney Stephen Izzy, and I'll be introducing certain aspects of the project and the development team to the planning board. First, I want to say Rhode Island mayoral academies, including Blackstone Valley Prep, are public schools. The legislation that created them was passed in 2008 and provided that these schools, along with all charter schools, are public schools. Blackstone Valley Prep has spent the past 12 years renovating and conducting school facilities for its students. BVP improved the Valley Falls area by adding 2 playgrounds, an outdoor basketball court, removing a problematic skate park, renovating the long abandoned St. Patrick's School, and has now begun cleanup of the old Valley Falls Motors property that previously had dozens of abandoned cars on it. BVP has 6 schools in Cumberland, Lincoln, and Pawtucket, and services a high proportion of students of color, students with limited English proficiency, families from poor families compared to the state average. Nevertheless, even with that population, Blackstone Valley Prep significantly outperformed the state average in RICAS scores recently. They recently outperformed their sending districts of Cumberland, Pawtucket, Lincoln, and Central Falls by over 15 percentage points in both math and English. BVP recently acquired the property abutting the high school at 5 Jones Street and 198 Broad Street from the Almeidas. This acquisition was necessary to allow the high school to grow to the census outlined in its application to RIDE. The high school currently has 403 students by its Rhode Island Department of Education census. That population is projected to grow over time to 550 students in total. However, it should be noted that most days attendance is currently closer to 360 students. Another reason BVP acquired the abutting property was to mitigate the traffic impact on the surrounding streets and to add significantly more parking than was required to the high school property. BVP will also provide additional outdoor recreational space in a location that was recently blighted property. BVP understands that the Rhode Island Department of Transportation Broad Street reconstruction project scheduled for completion sometime next summer, complicates the timing of the expansion project. BVP and its design professionals have planned construction to avoid interference with the RIDOT road project. And as discussed in the TRC meeting in October, we're reviewing the automobile queuing that occurs on town streets to decrease the rate and location of drop-offs and pickups. BVP has and remains committed to working with the town to address parking and traffic issues as it continues to improve or remove dilapidated properties in the area and bring community spaces to those areas. BVP is also aware of the requirement for an enforceable permit system that precludes student parking on streets within 3 blocks of the school during the school day. Mr. Modica and CEO of BVP, Jeremy Chipetta, met and exchanged suggestions on how to reduce student parking. BVP is working with the town planning department to obtain planning approvals to maintain its construction schedule in order to avoid an upheaval of student continuity. Finally, BVP would emphasize that the addition to the high school will be the final piece of the BVP real estate growth plan. BVP has been authorized by RIDE to grow to a total of 2,360 students. It currently enrolls nearly 2,200 students in grades K through 12. BVP has no intention to grow beyond that approved limit. It plans to add about 10 or 20 students at the Central Falls-based junior high school and increase the census at the high school by about 150. At this point, I'd like to introduce the development team that will be presenting tonight. Again, Jeremy Chipetta is here. He's the Chief Executive Officer of Blackstone Valley Prep. Michael DiMatteo is here, and he is the Chief Operations Officer at BVP. The traffic engineer for the project is Tim Thompson from PAR Corporation. The civil engineers are David Potter and Nicole Capistran from PAR Corporation. David Potter is here. The architect on the project is Arrow Street Architects. The owner's project managers are Ann DeSilva and Sam Bradner from the Peregrine Group, and Ann DeSilva is here tonight. The professionals will take over and present the application.
Thank you very much. My name is David Potter from PAR. I'm the Vice President in the Site Civil Division at PAR, right in Lincoln, Rhode Island. So I respect that we'll be as brief as we can. Just want to give a lot of the content and explanation of what is here. Glenn gave a good background of the existing conditions, so I'll try to build on that and not to repeat what he had said. So looking above me, we have the, this is a image showing the new school with addition from the intersection of McCondray and Jones. So we have a few more images that we can show you later in the presentation. I'll start with backing up to a 1,000-foot level and give you an overview of the surrounding roadways. So the project site located, it's bounded to the north by Maple Street, to the south by Jones, and the west by McCondray. The properties owned by or that were part of this development are highlighted in red here. So we have the current school building, which is shown here. We have the athletic field and the parking areas, and then we have the newly acquired parcel. This was just recently acquired this fall and housed the motor company. The existing conditions, this map just north is up, Jones Street is on the south side, Maple is on the north, and then Condrey on the west. Just go a little more detail about the project site itself. The existing building is here on the north side of the development. There's an existing walk that goes out towards. Much better. Thank you, Glenn. So there's a existing walk that leads out to a crosswalk that provides access to the field parking area. The southwest corner is landscaped. Got a flagpole here. And then there's the 7-space faculty parking lot on the southeast corner of that property. In addition to that, there's an existing transformer at the southeast corner here. A few emergency egress doors on the east side. On the new lot, this is mostly vegetated. The whole southern portion of this property was vegetated. A few years ago, you can see in the aerial imagery, there's a bunch of salvage cars, parts and such. That's all been cleaned up as part of the sale. There is an existing building that's out there today. It's about 2,800 square feet, I believe. It's a single-story garage. It's going to be removed and properly disposed of. That's not going to be part of the project. There's also an asphalt area to the south of that. The access to this property is from the north. The property is bound on all sides right now, northwest and south, by a wooden fence with no access, no interaction between the other parcels. There are utilities in both Jones Street and also in Maple, which I'll talk a little bit more about when we get into the proposed conditions, because we'll be connecting to a few of those. Topographically, everything in the area is, I'll say, generally flat, but there is a slight pitch from north to south. So stormwater is generally pitching from this point here down towards Jones. We've had a property line survey has been completed. We are in the process of obtaining a topographic survey and a survey that more accurately details the on-site features. I think that's good. So the plan here shows the new development. We have the new addition, which is on the south side of the building. It's going to connect along the existing face. So we're not demolishing any part of the building, just connecting over to this wall here. The walk on the north side is going to be, we're going to minimize disturbance to that to the maximum extent practical. We're going to have a few walks around the building to provide access to the doors. And I'll talk about that in just a minute. There's the new parking area, which we've proposed here on pretty much filling up this new lot. We've got access to the parking lot from both streets. From the north, from Maple, there's an inlet here, and then there's an outlet here. There's on Jones Street, there's an inlet here, and then an outlet here. If you remember, Jones Street is one way, east to west. The walks are provided to work with the drop-off of students. There will be right now, the main entrance to the facility, because this is all really back of house up against that existing automotive property or former automotive property. The main entrance is really right here. That's going to stay the main entrance, but there will be another main entrance for student drop-off created here. So there's already a door there. Our Arrow Street is going to be designing a more formal entry on that side. So this will be the main spot where students are dropped off. I'm going to talk about the site civil components, but Tim Thompson, our traffic engineer, is going to talk more about the site circulation. So I'm sure you have questions on that. I heard that, and that explanation is coming. There is also an administrative entrance here for some of the administrative staff, the folks working in the offices. We're expecting that they'll probably be parking in this lot and coming over to that entrance. We have a fence along this edge, the southern side of the property, and we don't have a walk connection from Jones to this main entrance. And we'll talk about that a little bit more. The idea is to promote people using the lot and using the infrastructure that's being created to reduce the desire to drop off at Jones Street. As you're aware, there is an existing sidewalk on the north, west, and south sides of the site. That was an important development that happened with the previous project. That sidewalk is proposed to extend further along Jones, where it ends about here. Other site improvements that we have here, we've got landscape islands. We've got, you can see in green here, trees. We have not yet selected the species. That's something that we'll provide at preliminary plan level once we get there. The school and the client has been very concerned about reducing the impact to the neighbors. And so the perimeter plantings and the general look of this parking lot are believed to be a vast improvement over the property as it is right now. We have adequate ADA parking, as we mentioned. In the existing condition, the dumpster is attached to that 7-space parking lot at the southeast corner. We'll have a very similar enclosure tucked in over here at the east side of the property. The enclosure, it'll be screened in accordance with the regulations. One, I guess something you don't see as often, but thought would be great for the students is that we've talked about adding a basketball court here for after hours use for the students. So we've got you can see outlined here, half a basketball court. So when the staff vacate the slot at the end of the day, if the students have the time and the desire, there's a place to provide a little bit more recreation and develop the program a little bit further. As far as utilities go, we have an existing sewer connection for the main building, heads out towards Maple. We can't get to that, so we're going to propose a new sewer connection from the new addition coming out into Jones Street. There is, I believe it's an 8-inch clay sewer in Jones Street. We are going to be using, at this time, we believe that the existing water service is going to be sufficient for the new addition. And same with the gas service. So right now, there's no new water or gas, just sewer. We will be using creating a new stormwater management system. And that's a couple BMPs are being incorporated here. In the existing condition, the 7-space parking area is actually a porous pavement. If you drive by there, you'll see the signs, no salting, no sanding, it's a porous pavement. And that helps us by reducing the amount of water that goes, the runoff that goes into the roadway. And so keeping with that, the entire parking lot here, everything that's off town property, everything on the private property will be porous pavement. So it's a porous pavement section on top of a number of layers of stone, crushed stone, that are all designed, dictated by DEM. They have a pretty clear design manual on what they want to see. So we'll be incorporating that for this entire area. We'll be doing the same thing for the walks as well. So everything here will be porous. In the existing condition, we also had to put an underground infiltration system, and that's buried in the lawn here, where we've set the building limits to avoid disrupting that underground system. So we're reworking the piping, but we're only going to send to it what that system can handle. So it's going to match the existing. We've run preliminary calculations to make sure that is feasible. So we also need to create another one of those infiltration systems. And I have outlined here a general size for that similar type system that will be placed underground in the parking lot. So there will be some catch basins, for higher storms where the porous pavement can't keep up. That grab that runoff, collect it, convey it to that underground system, and it can all infiltrate. So in general, I want to reiterate, I know Glenn mentioned the parking count. We have 130 spaces. We're required to have 110 because of the 550 student count. As far as the other zoning requirements, we have a table here. This plan is right out of your packet, just has a little bit more color on it. We meet all our zoning requirements, all the dimensional setbacks. The parking meets the setback from the property line as prescribed. So there's no relief being sought from dimensionally. And again, I mentioned the landscaping. The intent is that preliminary plan, we have a more detailed landscape plan to show the adherence to the landscape design requirements. And now I will hand it off to Tim to talk about the travel.
Thank you, Dave, and good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. My name is Tim Thompson. I'm a traffic engineer with Park Corporation. And I know we've heard tonight about some of the existing operations traffic-wise at the site. I'll be brief. Glenn gave a great overview of what we've seen out there as well. So just to touch on a couple of the existing condition points I'd like to just add to out there right now. I will say that there are two areas which receive a majority of the parent drop-off and pickup operations out there currently. One is the loop at Jones Street across from Winter Street. This does get quite a bit of activity in the morning drop-off with parents coming in and then exiting, either continuing down Winter Street or up McCondray and around to some of those side streets that were discussed earlier, accessing Broad Street. In the afternoon, this is also used quite frequently by parents picking up. And in the afternoon, I actually observed some vehicles double stacking in here, just providing some more on-site queue area for parents. Another area that really gets quite a bit of activity is the intersection up here with Maple and McCondray. In the afternoon, there are a number of parents that stack up along this side of the roadway and also along Maple in advance of that student dismissal period. Again, currently, buses stack up along the east side of McKendree Street. In the morning, it's much more of a sporadic arrival period for buses, and parents do drop off within this section quite a bit once buses do leave that area. I also just want to note a couple of the parking areas that are currently on the site. And this information, I believe, this figure is in your packet as well, but mostly down in this area along the soccer field is where students are parking currently. Faculty is in this main lot here along the east side of the soccer field, and then that small area that was noted before as well. And in this area, there are some vacant parking spaces that are available for parents to use during the pickup period. So we did see some infill on this parking area where parents were stacking up, waiting for children to be dismissed and cross over to their parent vehicle in this. So that's basically that basically covers the existing conditions, and I'd like to get into now what's proposed on the new site and how we're going to create a lot of improvements for the traffic circulation around the area of the school. So this figure that you see here shows basically a summary of the proposed circulation pattern. And I'll start over here along the west side of the school, that section along McCondray Street where buses are currently stacking up during dismissal period, currently dropping off in the morning. That's going to maintain use by buses primarily. That area in the morning will be allowed for some parent pickup or some parent drop off as well once buses clear out, but primarily this is going to be bus use along the west side here. Dave spoke a bit about the new parking lot and briefly touched on the circulation there, but really what we've done with laying out the design of this parking lot is we've tried to maximize the amount of available space on the site for parents to queue up, particularly in that afternoon dismissal period where we have the heaviest demand, where we have parents all arriving, waiting for that bell to be rung. So what we have proposed here is basically a two-loop system that's within this parking lot. And we like having the access to both Maple Street and Jones Street to provide parents with opportunities to access from different streets and help disperse traffic, particularly with traffic getting onto Broad Street. We're trying to avoid a situation where all parent traffic, all school-related traffic is exiting on one street, which could result in some significant backups on Maple in particular. So we like this approach where we have the opportunity, where we present the opportunity for parents to arrive via either Jones or Maple and exit via Jones or Maple. The other thing I'd like to point out is with this two-loop system that's in effect, I'll start with the Maple Street loop. Traffic will come off of Broad Street. We'll be able to enter into the site via this driveway on the west. And in the morning, it'll simply be a drop off at the front of the school. With that sporadic type of delivery in the morning, there's much less of an opportunity for a queue to build up. In the afternoon, there's this opportunity for parents to stack up along this whole stretch. And I want to note here that this is it's a raised walkway that separates the north side of the parking lot from the south side of the parking lot. And what this raised walkway does is it enables us to have additional area for vehicles to stack up within the parking lot along both sides. So again, really trying to maximize the amount of vehicle storage on this site. During the arrival and dismissal period, you'll notice gaps in the parking lots, one here at this crosswalk and one here. During arrival and dismissal times, these will be controlled, most likely with some type of cones or portable type of traffic channelizing devices to enforce just this loop activity on both sides. So what we want to prevent from happening is vehicles traversing either across this crosswalk or through the parking lot north-south. So we want to keep this area nice and clear for pedestrians, for students that are getting into and out of these vehicles to have access from the school directly into the parent vehicle. So you'll see here in this dashed yellow line that shows this shows pedestrian pathway directly into the building, again, without crossing vehicular paths. Jones Street, very similar to Maple. We have vehicles come off of Broad Street. They're able to come in, queue up along both the sidewalk adjacent to the building and then this sidewalk within the middle of the parking lot. They're then able to exit. Again, Jones Street is one way for this section. So they're able to exit here, come either down Winter Street and come back to Broad, or even continue up Jones and head to the north and connect to Broad that way. So again, we're providing parents the opportunity to use a variety of side streets to connect back to Broadway, trying to reduce that opportunity for queue to build up on these side streets. I think that covers our basic concept for what we're trying to achieve with the circulation pattern. And then the other item I just wanted to touch on was parking and how we anticipate those numbers looking and how we anticipate them being distributed on the site. So you'll see here in the blue, which takes up the majority of the parking area, that's where we anticipate staff and faculty parking. So the numbers that we have received from the school and expect for staff and faculty demand right now is 90 vehicles. Student parking is shown in the green here. Again, similar to where students are parking currently along the soccer field. That number is at 30 spaces. And then you can see we have a number of spaces left over for either visitor parking or for parents to utilize during that pickup and drop off period. Again, to get them off of these side streets into the parking lot, into a controlled atmosphere. And this, I should note, does not include any of the accessible spaces within the new parking lot. So I know it was noted before, we do expect there to be a surplus of parking on the site, given what we expect for parking demands. I will turn it back over to Dave.
Thanks, Tim. So I have, I did want to also note, the staff has been very helpful as we've gone through a number of meetings to talk about the planning and the traffic, and we've listened to their input. When we first came to the staff with our pre-application meeting, we had a parking lot that had more spaces. You know, the first thought was to try to maximize the number of spaces on the lot. When we talked about some of the circulation concerns, and we then did our observations for that preliminary traffic assessment, the number of spaces was scaled back in order to provide what we see as a better circulation pattern to reduce the amount of impact to the surrounding area. I think the delta there, the difference in spaces, we lost about 10. But in talking with BVP and with others, the circulation is a concern of everyone. So everyone wants a safe way for the students to get to school and to get out of school, get in the car and go home. And so that's what that's the result of those discussions. I have a few images that show the new school. It's preliminary where the design is at schematic level still. It doesn't look like it from these drawings. They look pretty nice to me, but there will be more time to look at colors and the design we expect to change as we move through the design steps. But these renderings give you a sense of scale and how this building fits on the site. Essentially, it's trying to match the look of the existing school. So it all looks like one project in the end. This is a view from the intersection of from Jones Street and also in the new western site entrance on Jones. So this is Winter Street here. We're looking to the northwest. So you can see that new student entrance. This is where the drop off would be. That administrative entrance is here. We have a view from the field lot, looking at that crosswalk. This is McCondray. We're facing due east to the main entrance. A few elevations. And then we did want to touch upon, Glenn brought up this figure, which was also included in your packet. It was with our submission, that depicts the construction staging area. So the hope is to begin construction of the project in summer of '22. The construction area is going to be the building footprint area, so the southern portion of the site here. There's some utility work that will happen in Jones Street, but that will be very limited and only at certain times. This will be passable for 99% of the construction. Jones Street cannot be blocked. But the contractor will be constructing the building here and then using the remaining area available as storage and stockpiling. The thought was to provide, because there's going to be some impact to the school as part of the construction project, the hope was to provide some modular classroom buildings. These are temporary. They'll be only here hopefully for the school year of '22 to '23. The hope is that the addition is open for school year of '23. So they go online in summer of '22 and they would be taken down in '23 once this addition opens. And this parking lot is going to be built as well. To support that and to help improve the current situation from even as early as September 22, if approved, they would construct a parking lot with an additional 20 spaces over here to provide some additional parking and reduce the impact from the loss of this 7 spaces, for instance, and during construction. So there will be a path between the building and the modulars right here, where students will come outside to get in and out. All the details of this, of course, need to be worked out with the contractor. It's preliminary, but we thought that sequencing would be an important discussion, and there are buildings here, so we wanted to make sure we brought that to the board and to the staff to get input and feedback.
Board have any questions at this point? Comments?
I have a question about the buses. So it looks like you've got some pretty creative solutions for the car drop off with the double loop. I believe you stated that there were about 5 buses now.
Yep.
So what is the anticipated increase in buses with the new population? And are there going to be any adjustments to the plan to accommodate those extra buses?
It's a good question. So we talked about, and I think one of the comments from the board members before we started was, do you try to get more buses and reduce the parent pickup? We do expect that there would be more buses. We don't know exactly how many buses, but the thought was one of the ideas we had was if there were more than 5 buses, do they come in shifts? Do they have the first wave of buses from at the dismissal time, and the second wave of buses come next.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
I do.
Mr. Scott?
You have some abutters to the east of the parking lot.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, just from my past experience, proposing a basketball court on that east side of the parking lot, that's not a good idea, I don't think, especially for the abutters, and especially if they shot basketballs like I did in school. They would end up in the lot next door. I think it would be very disruptive. I think you need to put it on the west side.
Okay.
So just a suggestion.
I think you'd be better off putting it in the parking area across the street Because it's not gonna be used as a, that's where your athletic
Yeah,
Yeah, either way.
activities are going on.
Either way.
yeah, that's an idea too.
And if you're gonna, if not all those parking spaces are occupied at 100% of the time.
Yeah.
I think you'd be better off.
Yeah, that's even better.
Yeah, there's an existing net there between the parking lot and the soccer field, so we can even double up on that.
Mr. Chairman,
Balls going all over.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes. Mr. Stevens.
could you speak into the mic?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank
I'm
you.
sorry. Yeah, okay. My recommendation as far as the basketball court is concerned is to move it across the street and the other parking lot where most of it's staff parking, but it's part of athletic activities. And then knowing what I know, that Garvin Field, there are some hoops there. And they're kind of separated in a way, even though cars do park along in that area. There's an opportunity from time to time for kids to get out there with their basketballs. And if the balls are gonna miss the hoop, they're going into the baseball field. And in this case, they'd be better off. So if they miss the basket, that's gonna go, whether it's, I think, isn't there a fence there or? netting?
There's a net there already.
Right,
So yeah, we could.
that'll, it'll
Yeah.
catch it. And that was, something that, you might want to consider.
Yeah, it's a good thought. We'll talk about that.
Okay.
The other question I have on the traffic pattern, how are you going to control how many people go in on Jones Street and how many people go in on Maple Street?
No.
It just seems that, I don't know how you're going to control that. That doesn't make any sense to me.
We can, I've seen it done different ways at schools. I've seen some schools set certain grades for different parking lots, So, my son's school, for instance, there was the second graders had to go in one entrance and then the remaining kids went in the other. There's a couple of ways you can do it with policy. I think the way we were thinking about with that lot on Jones Street was a lot of people use that 7-space lot. This is a little bit bigger, but people really seem to enjoy coming in Jones, dropping off, and then driving away. We see the same thing happening with Maple, the way that that's been laid out. And so I think you'll get people also figuring out which side is best for them, and then knowing which one is going to fit. Going to have less traffic. That's what I'm trying to get to. People will help figure that out. There's also policy that can be put in place.
Experience that I have is if you give parents a number of options, okay, to either access or egress in a number of different ways to get out of that area, I think you're going to end up with all kinds of spaghetti. The fewer decisions you have to give them to make to get in there and get out, the better off you are, in my opinion. Ms. Reese?
Yeah, the only thing I would add, and I think Dave's idea about policy to divide by grades is certainly something that we can consider as a project team. But when it comes to traffic, a lot of times things tend to naturally disperse. There might be first couple of weeks of school where parents try to figure out which side works best for them, but people are creatures of habit. And when you have a school like this where parents are picking up, there's a lot of communication that goes on between parents and students, and they know, all right, I'm always on, every day I come on the Jones Street side, every day I come on the Maple Street side. People will tend to naturally work that out and evenly disperse.
You know how many cars are entering the facility now?
So that's something that is going to be in our data collection effort as part of the full traffic study. So we'll be getting those exact numbers of how many parents drop off currently. In addition,
plus the anticipated.
Exactly, yeah. So we'll be extrapolating that existing data based off of the 33% or so increase in student population.
My only concern here now is stack up, because you're not going as far into the property as you were before with some of these cars. And it looks like they could back up onto Broad Street.
Some of these cars, if I may say, are entering McContry through Elizabeth Street, Gerald Street, Eli Street. So there's already that traffic that they use in those streets just to get away from the traffic down here. So please take that into account, because I know that happens.
Absolutely, absolutely. So to the point with traffic entering on Maple, They may also be entering via the Maple entrance from other side streets farther
Yeah.
to the north as well. So there, again, there'll be some dispersion of traffic because we have this grid system in place in the roadway network in this area.
I don't want to get too far into this. I know we've given you some thoughts. I don't want to get too deep into things because we're at a pre-application stage at this point. So just some kind of food for thought kind of things that are off the top of our heads, rather than try to, re-engineer this from the pre-application stage, because I know you've got an awful lot of work ahead of you between now and the next time you come before us. So I don't want to go too crazy with it at this point. Is there anything else that the members have to mention at this point, or have you completed your presentation? You're good.
We could talk about schedule for the traffic impact analysis too.
All I was going to say is feel free to give us as much feedback as you can today. That's why we're happy to come to the pre-application meeting and do the presentation that we did. We understand this is a project that has a lot of moving parts, and we want to make as many improvements to the existing conditions around the school as we can. So all ideas will be considered, and we'll work as hard as we can to.
Okay.
to
I think
make this better.
you get the sense that from the board that our biggest concern more than anything is the traffic flow, the patterns, so they don't, converge and bump into each other. And like I said before, if you give someone too many options, that's when you're going to have a problem and a bottleneck. Where if you establish, a bus pattern in the flow for the buses, and from my experience from the two schools that my grandson had attended, they separate the bus traffic from the parents pick up and take off, dropping off and picking up. And it works really, really well, and it moves very easy. So I think that the prime focus that the board has at this point is really traffic,
that traffic,
and
yeah.
patterns.
Okay,
Thank you.
understood.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Stevens.
I wanted to remind you, per the director's report, Conservation Commission is going to beginning to review and make recommendations on master plan. So it's our hope that they'll be able to meet on January 24th, 2 days in advance of your 26th meeting. So we expect that the applicant will be making the same presentation to the Conservation Commission.
Absolutely. Thank you, because we're anxious to hear from the Conservation Commission at this point. They haven't been involved too much recently because they didn't have enough members on their commission. And I look forward to having them jump back into things. Mr. Stevens or Mr. Modica, is there anybody in the queue that? Okay.
So for anyone who is watching us on Zoom, there is a raised hand function at the bottom of your screen. It says raise hand and there's a hand icon. So if you just want to click that, if you don't have any questions. So we do have one. Stephanie Gemsky.
Okay.
So I think you're unmuted, Stephanie. Can you say something?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Hi, everybody. My name is Stephanie Gemsky. I'm former District 1 town councilor. I live obviously in this district. And I just wanted to make a couple comments. I know this is still the preliminary. I heard multiple mentions of the fact that people and parents still park on Jones Street. And while I was on the town council, that was a really big issue with the neighbors. And we passed an ordinance that has no parking, stopping, standing on Jones Street. And it's still a continuing issue. So how do you plan on addressing issues like this if over the past few years, even with the town ordinance, nobody abides by that?
Actually, that's a good question. I would anticipate, and I'm not going to have an answer for you, but the one thing is we do have a public safety staff, meaning the police, and I believe it's their responsibility to, you know, drive around through there and ticket people when they're parking where they shouldn't. But that being said, I don't know if Mr. Stevens, you have anything else to add at this point? Okay. But point well taken. Thank you. Anything else?
I just wanted to reinstate that I implore the planning board, and I know that there are several members that have very good questions, and please listen to the voice of the residents, because when this came up with the planning board last time, we were assured multiple times by PAR Engineering as well as BVP officials that traffic would not be an issue, and it has over the years been a continuous issue. And I know that this is supposed to stop that issue, but every single entrance and exit leads to Broad Street. And within 1,000 feet, there's 3 BVP schools. And even the tiered times don't necessarily coincide perfectly. Please, I implore you to listen to the voices this time of the residents. And thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Modica, is anybody else in the queue?
So if there's anyone else who'd like to speak, who's on the Zoom meeting, please just click the raise hand button at the bottom of your screen. So, Mr. Chair, no one has raised their hand.
Okay. Is there anyone here in the audience that has anything to contribute to this proposed application? Seeing no one, I'll restrict comments to the board if the board has anything else to add. Nothing? All right, I thank everyone. I thank the applicant and their staff and experts at this point. We look forward to seeing you at the next meeting when you're on the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Mr. Modica, okay. Town Council recommendation, Holding Ponds Ordinance, sponsor Cumberland Planning Board. Planning Department proposes to reduce the required fence height around a holding pond infiltration basin from 6 feet to 4 feet. Mr. Modica.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So at its last meeting on October 27th, 2021, the planning board voted in favor of forwarding a favorable recommendation to town council to approve ordinance 21-29 regarding holding ponds, and to request the town council consider 2 changes to the proposed ordinance. Those 2 changes were to change 25-foot buffer to 50-foot buffer, and to add the word "or owner" after the developer or subdivider, which was on line 97. The ordinance subcommittee has not yet met to review the proposed ordinance. So the planning department is proposing one additional change to the holding pond ordinance, which is to reduce the required fence height around the basin from 6 feet to 4 feet. And this is noted in track changes on line 56 of the revised ordinance. And we're proposing this for several reasons. First, DEM regulations do not require a fence at all around basins. And they say that basins are generally not encouraged. except for certain instances where a basin may be in a residential neighborhood where it may be warranted. We think the most relevant comparison to infiltration basins is related to in-ground swimming pools, as both hold standing water. In an in-ground pool, the deep end is going to be at least 5 feet deep and up to 8 feet deep. Looking at the state building code, building codes require a 4-foot fence around all swimming pools. The 3 basins that the planning board reviewed over the summer had a dry depth from top to bottom of 2 feet, 3 feet, and 4 feet. The 100-year flood elevation was actually less. For those 3 projects, it was 2 feet, 2.5 feet, and 3 feet. But remember, these basins are not continually retaining water. They gradually release water. So our feeling is a 4-foot fence is required for a swimming pool that constantly holds 8 feet of water in the deep end. A 4-foot fence for a basin, which has much less depth and does not perpetually hold water, would be appropriate. The Public Works Director has no objection to a 4-foot fence. He feels that such a barrier would still represent a sufficient deterrent. So the Planning Department recommends that the Planning Board forward a favorable recommendation to the Town Council to revise the required fence height from 6 feet to 4 feet in Ordinance 21-29.
Board have any questions or comments?
I have no objections to this change.
No, I'm thinking the same thing as far as, I don't have an issue with a 4-foot fence. I think it's more than adequate. It's more than, for me, it's more important, even though kids of a certain age can probably hop the fence, it's still a deterrent. And if it's a requirement sufficient for swimming pools, I don't take issue to it. I really do like the pond's fenced in no matter what. It protects the pond in itself. For a couple of reasons, and the one that came to mind after our previous meeting was when vegetation grows up in and around, okay, then you're never gonna know that there's a pond there, but the fence is gonna say, hey, there's something over there. So for me, it's an important thing for safety. Because at any point in time, even though the latest designs, all the water is going to drain out very quickly, either it's going to seep into the ground or other means that they use. But anytime you got, if they can say, if you can drown in 2 inches of water in the bathtub, I think that is a point well taken. So I do like fences, although I wouldn't be adverse to, barberries all the way around. So, anything that's going to make it difficult for somebody to get in, I wouldn't be adverse to it. I've seen that done in town of North Kingstown some years ago. They did that once. Worked out okay. So, anyone else? Well, then do I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we send a positive recommendation to the Town Council that the required fence height around infiltration basins be reduced from 6 feet to 4 feet in Ordinance 21-29 in the Code of Ordinances and the zoning ordinance.
I have a motion by Mr. Butler. Do I have a second? Okay, second by Mr. D'Ambrosio. Any other discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Chair votes yes. Motion carries. And not last but least, but pretty close to it, is the 2022 Planning Board meeting dates and deadlines. Mr. Modica.
We're simply presenting the meeting dates in 2022, the last Wednesday of the month, except for November, like we're doing this month. The deadlines are, the first column are for deadlines for projects with no public hearing requirements, which could be, a master plan. These have a 4-week deadline to get their application to us in order to get on the agenda. Larger projects like a major land development, we would like the information 5 weeks before the meeting so we can look through the information.
Does anything stand out to anyone? Looks good to me. Anybody's birthday on here or anniversary? Okay, then do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve the proposed meeting dates and deadlines for 2022 as presented.
Motion by Mr. Butler, second by Mr. Bush. All in favor? Opposed? Chair votes yes. The ayes, motion carries. And now, last but not least, oh, wait a minute. Public comment. Do we have any public comment?
We do have 3 people on the Zoom meeting. If anyone would like to speak, please press the raise your hand icon at the bottom of your screen. And we have nobody raising their hand.
With that being said, motion by Mr. Bush, second by Ms. Reese. All in favor? Opposed? No hands? Yep. Thank you.